Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. You join us on this live recording as we dissect the Brentford game, and we also talk a little bit about what 2024 has been like for the Albion, as tomorrow marks the last game of the calendar year. But before we get into any of that, let's see what festiveness Santa Claus has brought us on this December issue of the Albion Obsessed podcast. Welcome, Joe. Joe, my friend, how are you? Did you have a good Christmas?
Hello. Yes, a good Christmas. A good chance to catch up with the family, see all their lovely faces, and put our feet up a little bit, have a bit of a relax. And yeah, little one loved it. She's very much in the magic of Christmas still. It's going to be hard to tell her that it's now finished. So I'm looking forward to that. But yes, feeling good, mate. How are you?
Well, Santa Claus was really good to the Budgeons this year. He bought us all COVID. So between myself, my son, my sister, my brother-in-law, my three nephews, and my dad, we've all been poorly and in bed for most of the last week or so. So that is why my voice is sounding a bit dark and sexy like this. And if I have a coughing fit, that will also be why. But I have it on good authority that you can't catch it through the intersphere webs, so you should be fine. But no, it was you make the most of it when you're poorly in bed. But no, it was all right, mate. Thank you. How about you, Curtis? Did you have a nice Christmas? It's good to have you back on the pod.
Thank you. It's nice to see you both. Yeah, Christmas was great. Really relaxed. Lots of heart altering foods. So that's always nice. Lots of chocolate. It was really nice, really chill. I'm glad to be doing this with you guys. But Santa, this Christmas, gave me a load of patience, which is what we're going to need for this club at the moment.
Yeah, and just because I want to prolong the inevitable discussion, the worst part of being poorly this Christmas was just having no appetite. So like, I'm desperately wanting to just destroy some roast potatoes. Just couldn't be done. Just couldn't be done. I had like half a potato, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want any more. So that's been the hardest thing.
Wallace and Gromit was on
for me.
though, so that's a
Oh
positive for
yeah,
Christmas.
Vengeance Most Foul. What a
Outstanding.
fantastic! Genuinely, if you've not seen it, go and watch it. That was awesome. Loved that. Evening, Michael. Happy Christmas to you, my friend. And did you enjoy your sweets on Friday, Joe?
Well,
That's
yes,
Michael.
I did. I saw Luke Links outside the ground, and he was doing a Christmas giveaway. So big ups to him. I haven't had the sweets yet. I've given them to my wife because I'm feeling extra festive. So so she might enjoy them.
Yeah, talking of your wife, Joe, it was Tony's first Premier League game, isn't that right?
Was her first Premier League game. She's been to a few WSL games at the Amex. She went to the Crawley game this year. So I was thinking we saw goals in all of those games. Hopefully, we might see some goals in this game. Safe to say, she left the Amex quite disappointed. But yeah, she enjoyed it. We were in our season ticket seats, so we were like 2 rows from the back, from the front even. And she was like, "Wow, these players are so close! I could almost touch them." I know, steady on, steady on. Your husband sat right next to you. No, she loved it.
Good. I'm glad because that's what it's all about. And I think we said it when Curtis went for his first game all those seasons ago. Seeing Brighton not win for your first game is like a rite of passage. So let's dive into the Brentford game. Then we're going to dissect it slightly differently because of the 0-0 scoreline. I've sort of structured the conversation today slightly differently. And of course, viewers, if you're joining us live, please do leave your comments if you want us to chat about anything in particular. First thing, Curtis, is I think I'm right in saying that before that game, Brentford had only had 1 point away from home this season. And I think we said something similar when we played Southampton. That Southampton hadn't scored a point away from home all season. Do teams who are in those sorts of runs, do you think they look at games against Brighton and sort of go, "Oh, lads, don't worry about it. We haven't had a point away from home all season, but we're up against Brighton next, so we'll be fine."
I think they didn't at one point, but I think this season especially, we've become a lot more susceptible to goals. And I think a lot of these teams are probably licking their lips, thinking that they could probably get something out of playing us. But let's just hope that this is only a temporary thing, and we can address this in January.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think, Joe, what's tended to bug me and quite a lot of the Albion fans I've seen on social media is the results that we've had, not necessarily performances, because there have been moments in games where we've played okay and we've done well. But in terms of results, this is supposed to be quote unquote the easy run. Now, I like to think that if you've been watching Brighton for any length of time, you will know that there is no such thing as an easy run of games for Brighton, because we typically do worse against the teams that we're expected to beat. But Joe, it's been a pretty dreary run. We haven't won a game since the game against Bournemouth. I think I'm correct in saying so. We're talking over a month ago now. The mood in the Albion sphere is quite well. It depends on your perception, I suppose. I've seen a lot of negativity surrounding recent results. I think the Palace game notwithstanding, I think that in and of itself needs to be looked at for what that game is in terms of the rivalry. But generally speaking, the results haven't been great. There's a lot of sort of, as tends to be the case when things aren't going brilliantly well. There's a lot of sort of sniping at one another on social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, everywhere really. Where's your Albion mojo at the moment, Joe?
It's certainly not the highest it's ever been. But I think I don't want to be that boring guy, but perspective is a great thing, obviously. I think when you look at the two results we've just had, obviously a 1-1 draw at the West Ham Stadium and then a 0-0 draw with Brentford, that's paired with Joel Veltman coming back into the side. I think yesterday he showed, not yesterday, 2 days ago even, he showed incredible fight, and he's one of those people that you can just rely on him to defend solidly. And I think that's what we've been lacking defensively, and that's probably why we've seen the results that we've seen prior to these two results where he's come back in. And then we talk about not having won since the Bournemouth game. That's when I believe Danny Welbeck last played for us. So this big dip has coincided with some really important players not being in the side. And I know that we've got stacks of quality, but do we have the stacks of balance that those two bring? I don't think so. Because when you got Enciso, Gruder, who, by the way, Gruder was fantastic a couple of days ago. I'm not sniping him at all. But you've got young, hungry players all trying their absolute best and maybe overdoing it a little bit. Whereas when you've got Danny Welbeck in there, you've got that calm presence. He's been there. He knows what to do in the Premier League game when things are getting tough. So we are massively lacking that balance at the moment. We can have all the talent in the world, but talent, sometimes you really need that experience. And as soon as we get that experience in, I really think we'll see an upturn in form. Things are slowly getting better from what we've seen a couple of weeks ago. We just need to keep improving on that. Donkey said it as much in his post-match interview. We need to keep doing the things that we know we can do well, and we need to do that consistently. And we haven't done it consistently over 90 minutes this season. I lost my head after the Palace game. I was extremely pissed off on social media. People will quote me. But I've had a lot of thinking time since then. I think we just need that tiny bit more patience. And I get it. Football's an emotional game. We all come out after results and we're, this needs to be better, that needs to be better. The players know it. So, as much as we come on here and speak about it, they know it more than anyone. They don't need to hear the boos. They don't need to be shouted at or anything like that. They know it. They want to win. They're not coming out there to purposely draw 0-0 with Brentford or give up a 2-goal lead. These are the things that are going to get eked out over a period of time when Fabian Hertzler can learn a lot more, and he's learning extremely harshly at the moment. And these are the lessons that you have to, take in your stride and hope that something comes of it. And if it doesn't, then we know he's not the right man for the job. But I think we do need to allow some time for learning.
Yeah, time is the greatest teacher of them all. And Curtis, the thing that sort of prompted me to sort of start the podcast with this question about Albion mojo is because I believe that, I wasn't there, so this is all just obviously things that I've seen reported. It was in the program notes. Apparently, Barber was receiving some late night emails full of what he put as doom and gloom after recent results. Now, I'll come in on my sort of bit about this briefly in just a moment, but do you think, Curtis, that there's a right way and a wrong way to critique and criticize? Joe mentioned there the boos. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but at the end of the game on Friday, there were boos to be heard in the crowd. What do you make of that? Are the fans sort of letting the last sort of month or so of results sort of get the better of them? Are some of the critiques justified? Where does Curtis Friend fall in this discussion?
I get people's frustrations. Absolutely. I'm watching the same stuff as everybody else. It's not been fun at times to watch some of the performances, but I went into this season with this manager, and I predicted us privately to be finishing 10th, right? Because I thought to myself, young manager, young players, essentially a new squad. We've lost some key players, Gross, Gilmore, and who else did we lose? Did we lose someone else? No, just those two that I can think of anyway. But we lost some key figures. We've had some injuries, which was always going to happen. Unfortunately, Welbeck's legs are made of Jacob's cream crackers, so that was going to occur. And I just think this is a wave we have to ride, and I think it's something that we have to be together on this, because I've seen so many arguments and over really petty things on social media, and I don't think that helps us as a fan base or helps the team in any way. But I totally get the frustrations. I get why people might be booing. Yes, does it help? No, absolutely not. But I get the frustrations ultimately.
Yeah, likewise. And I agree with what you've just said, Andrew, about being the 12th man or the 12th player, however you want to phrase it. The one thing I will say about that is that Brighton fans, for as long as I've been a fan, we've always been a very reactive fan base in terms of live games. We will cheer when there's something worth cheering. Otherwise, it can be deathly quiet, especially at home games. And I know that the club are doing things to try and improve the home atmosphere. I know there's recently been the report saying they're going to move the away fans into the southwest corner, I believe, which will hopefully help improve atmosphere. But the Brighton faithful have always, as I say, have been a reactive fan base. You've got to give them something to cheer for. And I think some of the football we've played at times, like in the Brentford game, which we will discuss in just a moment, has been really, really good. What I have disliked about the discourse in this recent run, I dislike the extremes. So I dislike the people who are like, I say dislike the people. I dislike this idea of Hertzler out. I haven't been overly impressed with Fabian Hertzler. I'll say it. There's been moments that have been good, but generally speaking, I'm sort of being quite like, okay, but I want more. But it also irks me that the other extreme of that, of the you've got to stay positive, because in the 90s we were terrible. It's one of those where there's room in the middle for nuance, and this idea that if you offer even the mildest of critique or criticism, you're negative, and that your point of view isn't worth hearing. That annoys me. I would never turn around to someone like Dagan, and this isn't a dig at Dagan, but obviously Dagan's very positive. I would never turn around to Dagan, who is always putting a positive spin on things, and just be like, nah, you're too positive. I don't want to hear what you've got to say. So I just don't like the extremes. Things at the moment, we're not in a good place. And I think it's only right to critique that and say, well, actually, this isn't going very well. What do we think we could do to improve? I think that's absolutely fine.
And do you not think that balances what we're seeing as well? Is we're not seeing the extremes. We're not seeing extremely positive, and we're not getting relegated.
No, exactly.
So of course, we're going to be like, well, yeah, it has to be better if we want to achieve what we want to achieve.
I just think
what we want to achieve as well. So
I just think people have come in with a lot of unrealistic expectations. They expected this new manager who's had no Premier League experience to come in and get us straight back into Europe. I just believe that was...
Curtis, real quick, sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
because it's the point. Do you think that's because of the coach or because of how much money the club have spent?
Yes to both, incidentally. But money doesn't equal success most of the time. And if you look at our recruitment, we've never bought, apart from a few exceptions, we've never bought like hugely experienced players for the straight away. We've got like Welbeck and Milner and stuff like that, and Lallana, but like they're like just three that I can name quickly off the top of my head who are like ready for it. We buy a lot of youngsters and we do the same thing, and yeah, I totally get the frustrations in regards to the spending and whatnot, but again, that's just what we do.
Thing is, with the spending, we haven't actually seen many of those people. Like Rifa's come in, has had an injury, he's been sort of out of sorts a little bit. Gruder's only just come in and has been fantastic every time I've seen him in a Brighton shirt. Kadioglu's had a really annoying injury. So their big moment. Rutter has been fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So what we've spent on has been very positive, but we've just not seen it all together. We've not had that run of healthy people to go, yeah, no, this is our squad. This is why we spent that money. It's just been chopping and changing. We don't know who our midfield pairing is. Hinshelwood's come in. Ayari's come in. Hinshelwood's gone out again. Ayari's gone out again. Belieber, they've tried Belieber and Weaver, Belieber O'Reilly, Belieber Ayari. So there's no consistency. There's nothing to build with. So that's what we need to see in the second part of the season. Some consistency. And that comes with obviously people being healthy. But it comes with being bold as a manager and saying, no, this is the pairing that I want to see. And this is the pairing we're going to build off of. It's no good chopping and changing it all the time, because you're never going to find out who really can, drag you out of a rough spot if you're just bringing them on for half an hour.
Very well said, Joe. I think that's definitely worth something bearing in mind. We're 20 minutes in, best part, and we haven't actually discussed the Brentford game at all. But no, thank you for your thoughts there, guys. I mean, as I say, I have structured today's podcast slightly differently just because of the scoreline. I've entitled the first section, Joe, "It's All Getting a Bit Potter," because the first half was like stepping into a time machine. And going back about 4 years, because Brighton, when we started against Brentford, we were electric. Some of the attacking play was brilliant. I think in that first 40 minutes or so, Julio Enciso had more shots than any other player in the Premier League this season for the first half. So we played like a house on fire. But once again, we were just not making an early dominance count. I mean, I'm just going to reel off some of these, Joe. Enciso hits the post after a lovely little layoff from João Pedro. And then Belieber has a left-footed drive pushed away by Flecken. Enciso has pretty poor header saved by Flecken. Gruder, free kick 20 yards out, comfortable save in the end. Matt O'Reilly makes room for himself, nutmegs the player, Flecken dives to keep it out. Matoma had an opportunity that Flecken scooped away. Enciso again side foots wide from the edge of the box. We had plenty of opportunities, Joe, in that first half to basically put the game to bed. But we just couldn't do it. Do you put that down to Joe that, you've already mentioned there about Danny Welbeck being out? I think we miss a number 9. I don't think João Pedro's an out-and-out number 9. Not in the quintessentially British number 9. You know what I mean? You've got not necessarily a target forward, but someone who's perhaps a bit bigger, a bit stronger. Not that João Pedro isn't big and strong, but I always think that João Pedro plays better when he's playing off of Welbeck or Ferguson. Obviously, Ferguson was injured. Do you think we're missing that sort of number 9 striker that can bring the best out of João Pedro, or was it just a case of not taking your chances?
Yeah, João in that sort of role where he's playing off of a striker, he's so much better. He can float out wide. He can, get into the gaps, which are created by fantastic running by Mitoma, whoever's on the right wing, and Welbeck's intelligence as well, of dragging defenders and keeping them busy whilst João Pedro does what he does. I think João Pedro gets very frustrated, obviously, with what we saw a little bit later in the game, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we go on. But in all honesty, I thought our lacking in that first half was just lack of confidence and conviction. If that first goal, that first shot from Enciso hadn't hit the post and it gone in, I think the floodgates would have opened. We were playing really well. We were creating chances. If that goal goes in, the ears prick up and we think, yeah, we can go on and get more here. And we probably would have. That's what we have seen from a Fabian Delph side, is that when we do score, we can go and get more. It's the keeping the leads that are the issue. So yeah, I think just a complete and utter lack of confidence and a lack of leadership, as I said earlier. João Pedro's getting frustrated, flopping his arms around, telling the crowd to get up. And Ciso's doing his best with every shot. I think every shot got further away from the goal, which was annoying. But Brian Grudo, I mean, what a player! I think the more we see from him, the more confident he gets. He's going to be a real asset. He can play through the middle. He can play out wide. So yeah, let's wait and see what he can do for us.
And Curtis, as direct and sort of keen to shoot as we were in the first half, it was almost the polar opposite in the second half. In the second half, it was like we were waiting for the perfect pass, the perfect sort of eye of the needle pass before we would have an opportunity at goal. And that's when I say it's all getting a bit Graham Potter, that's what I mean. We're trying to be too intricate. It's the sort of like the IT crowd sketch of, did you see that ludicrous display last night? Brighton are always trying to walk it in. That's what it became like in the second half. Really frustrating second half.
Yeah, I mean, I don't ultimately feel it was a bad half in regard, but it was a different half to the first one, and notably different. And you're right. I think we are very guilty of overplaying. I say at times. I think mostly we tend to overplay, especially in that final third or just outside the box, because we as a fan will just see the opportunity. Like, why isn't someone making a shot? But we just decide to make like 5 separate passes before we just make this really tame shot that just goes into the arms of the keeper. And I think, again, I have to echo what Joe says. I think a lot of it's just confidence. I think if Pedro could get a goal or just one of these other players, I think it would just do wonders for them and the whole team, But unfortunately, things have been going the way they are recently, and we just have to keep supporting, keep being loud, and just hope that something comes of these chances. I would think it would be more concerning if we weren't making the chances, but it's more frustrating that we are and nothing's coming of them. So,
Tom, the other frustrating thing for me was obviously Flecken went off injured and they brought on their substitute goalkeeper. I was thinking, test him early. Like, get him into the game. He's coming into a really high-paced attacking, coming into face a really high-paced attacking team. Test him We didn't. It's just these little opportunities you see in games. You're like, we just need to take them. We need to stop being so nice. We need to stop waiting for teams to get back into shape, and we just need to go for it.
You've hit the nail on the head there, Joe. And I think we did the same against Southampton. I think their goalkeeper that day was Lumley, and I don't think he had started a Premier League game for them. And we just made his life incredibly easy too. And it just harps back to, I think it was when we played Crystal Palace under De Zerbi and Solly March scored. Their goalkeeper that day was an untested goalkeeper too. And on that day, we did score and we eventually won. But again, we've got these young and experienced keepers. Why are we not peppering their goals? I mean, what I would tend to do as a coach myself is I'm always saying to the kids, if you get a chance, have a pop from distance, test the goalkeeper, test them early, because we want to make sure that he's up to speed. And if he's just been on the bench for 40 minutes or whatever, he's not going to be up to speed. Get a shot away, see, make him work for it. But we just didn't do that. And I think
budging in.
And it's what you said, Joe, about like when in the first half, we were moving the ball around quite quickly, creating opportunities, creating space, because Brentford were very keen just to sit back and hit us on the counter. I mean, we haven't even talked about the offside goal because it was offside. The only thing that I had to say about that was Lewis Dunk, what the hell were you doing on the halfway line? But Brentford were just sat back. They were very keen just to sort of sit back, soak up pressure, and try and hit us on the counter attack. But in the second half, we were moving the ball so slowly, sideways, 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 back, sideways, 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 back. There was no like switches of play. There was no quick ball to move defenders out of the way, move defenders around. And it's just really congested in there. And it just seems that Fabian, like his predecessor and like his predecessor, has yet to sort of crack the low block teams. And I know it's easier said than done, but yeah, it was very two juxtaposed halves again, but not necessarily in a super negative way, like Curtis, has already mentioned. One thing we've got to talk about before we talk about the main silver lining that can make us all very happy. Joe, you've already alluded to it, is João Pedro. João Pedro, a very lucky boy to remain on the pitch, dragged back by the Brentford man, and quite clearly and deliberately swings an elbow, doesn't make any connection. The Brentford player is booked. VAR looked at it and deemed that it was not violent conduct. In your opinion, Joe, was João Pedro lucky to stay on the pitch, or was it the correct decision?
First of all, it's a very stupid action to make anyway. I think his moping and flinging his arms about has happened on many. He hasn't swung for anyone before, but his attitude of, I don't know, just a really weird attitude at the moment from João Pedro. I don't know if it's the more responsibility and maybe he puts more pressure on himself. I don't know. I personally don't think it was a red card, because the angle that's getting thrown around Twitter and other social media platforms is quite damning, but that's not the angle to look at. He's not overly close to the player. He's actually signaling to the ref what the Brentford player was doing to him. It wasn't a swing of the elbow to try and hit the Brentford player. So I think, and I hope that's what VAR saw in terms of saying, no, it's not violent conduct. He was just signaling to a referee. That doesn't take away from it's a very stupid action to make, because you're giving VAR and the referee a decision to make. And it could have gone the other way. We could have been down to 10 men, and Brentford possibly would have gone on to win the game. So whilst I think it's not a red card, I think it's stupid.
How about you, Curtis? Where do you stand on this? Are you with Joe, or do you think that he should have been sent for an early shower?
I largely agree with what Joe had to say. I think it's ridiculous talking about possibly giving the card for intent. I just think it's silly. Like, if that's the case, then they could be just booking everyone, everyone. I get the argument that if that hit, it would have knocked him unconscious and all the rest, and it's like, but it didn't. So I don't get it. Yeah, was it stupid? Absolutely, really reckless of him, and it shows that that he just shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have. The question shouldn't have been there to be looked at in the first place. But I just don't think we can go booking for people for potentially doing something.
I disagree. I think he should have gone.
Really? I was going to say the comments are saying I disagree, and there was intent. I really don't think there was intent.
The thing is, it doesn't matter about. Thing is, from the angles I've seen, Joe, and I wasn't in attendance, and I don't have the angles VAR does.
I was actually in the toilet when it happened live, so I've only seen the replays.
From what I've seen, I think he's swinging for him. And
yeah, admittedly, I'll say the same thing. To me, it doesn't look like he's signaling to the ref. It literally looks like he's just done that. But,
I think only he will know what he was really doing. But if you've got a footballer squaring up to another footballer, throwing a punch, does it matter if the punch connects or not? If you throw a punch at another player, you're gone, regardless of whether you hit him or not. So it should be the same for an elbow. He should have gone, in my opinion. I think he was really frustrated, obviously being dragged back. I totally understand that, but I think he's a very lucky boy. I think considering we saw the Villa red card, which many have said is really harsh, it just seemed really strange that on the same day we saw something like that.
The difference is one connects and the other one doesn't. That's
as I say, if you swing for a player on the pitch and you don't connect, you should still be sent off because it's violent conduct.
Yeah, but I feel like with the Villa thing, you've obviously seen it, right? I'm assuming. Yeah, I think it's quite clearly a red because there's quite clearly a connection there, and I totally understand what you mean by, like, you can't be being violent on the pitch. I totally get that, but again, I think a red would have been harsh. Red would have been harsh.
Okay, here's a different question for you then, gents. Do you think if the ref had given a red, that the VAR would have looked at it and overturned it, or told the ref, "That's a bit harsh, mate"?
They would have looked at it. They look at everything.
And that's what I mean. Do you think that if the ref had given that as a red card, the VAR would have told him to go and have a look at the monitor to change his?
Probably not. Probably
We've spoken so many times about VAR trying to protect their mates, and that's what they are. At the end of the day, they're all out to protect each other, and there is, quite clearly stupid people leading this country's officiating program. So yeah, probably not.
Yeah, I think it's just worth perhaps looking at it from that lens. I think if it had been given as a red, I don't think VAR would have overturned it or attempted to. But anyway, we disagree, and that's okay because we've done so.
Tom, you're wrong.
We've done so without shouting and screaming at one another, and I haven't been called negative for thinking he should have been sent off. We can sit and lament Brighton's inability to score. We can sit and debate whether João Pedro should have been sent off or not. But I don't think there's any debate for the next talking point, which is, of course, the return of Solly March after what has been a very long time out for him with a terrible, terrible injury. I mean, I must admit, I was very surprised to see him named in the squad this early. I know that there was rumblings that he said to Fabian that he was ready to start playing over the festive period. But even so, I was surprised to see him named in the squad. Happy, don't get me wrong, very happy indeed. And, like many others, when he came onto the pitch towards the very end of the game, I was so, made up for him that he'd managed to come back and it's a testament to himself as a professional and as a human being, and to the club and the medical staff as well, who have got him to this point. Joe, I know you're a huge Solly March fan, and how being in the ground there, you could hear the roar of the crowd when he came on. Just how brilliant, how emotional was it to see Solly return?
Yeah, there were multiple moments where his name was sung when he first got announced as in the team, when Richard Reynolds does his bit about 45 minutes before kickoff. A big chorus of Solly March went around the Amex with only probably 10,000 people in the seats. And then obviously when he came out to warm up as well in the first half, it was probably louder than any goal that I'd ever heard at the Amex. It was incredible. I really didn't think we'd see him come onto the pitch, and I was just so happy to see him in the warm up, see him on the sidelines in that bib again, in his tracksuits, ready and waiting in the wing, and he got his moment, which I thought was fantastic. And yeah, to see him back in the stripes was just unbelievable. As you say, Tom, testament to him, testament to what he's gone through. 3 big injuries in his career, and he's always come back, and we hope he comes back stronger. He was tested quite early, wasn't he, by the Brentford winger, where he had a little scary moment at right back, and I was thinking, oh no, Solly, don't make this your comeback. But he had a really good moment towards the end as well, where if that ball had gone in, Tom, I cannot tell you, I probably would have been on the pitch.
I think you and many others
don't ban me, Paul Barber, but yeah, I probably would have been on the pitch.
Yeah, it's Curtis, a real, as Joe says, a real emotional moment. Fantastic for him. A moment of hairiness up against Brentford's pacey wingers, but also, yeah, almost a fairy tale moment as he gets time and space, and from his preferred right position on the right, cuts in on his, bullet of a left foot, and just tips one over the bar. Would have been a fairy tale ending to his comeback.
Yeah, this is a guy that we heard rumours that we'd never see him in a Brighton shirt again. And I mean, especially after, you say 3 big injuries at this point, most players don't come back from stuff like this. So it just shows his tenacity and his want to continue playing and come back. And yeah, it would have been incredible if he got that goal, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. It did not happen. But I'm sure he'll get many opportunity to do so down the line.
I'm sure he will, and I think that as long as the club and he work in tandem, work together to sort of make sure that he comes back and takes it little by little, because I know there's a tendency from the player perspective to perhaps think, oh yeah, I'm ready for this, I can jump back in tomorrow. So I think it's really important that to just make sure that we can.
I think, judging by, sorry Tom to cut in, but judging by his post-match, I think he was very aware that he wasn't quite match fit yet, and he said he was, after that run against the Brentford winger, was blowing already, and that was within 10 seconds of being on the pitch. So yeah, I think, as you say, it's just about having the medical staff just hold him back a little bit.
And he spoke about the shot as well. He said he took too much time to think about it. But imagine you've been out for that long and you have that opportunity in front of you. It's gonna do a lot to you in that moment. So yeah, just happy he's back.
Yeah, it is, and Brentford gave him all the time and space in the world, and we've said it about so many different players and over different years at Brighton. Sometimes it's the chances where you've got too much time to think that you overthink, whereas if you don't have that time and space, sometimes actually those long shots can work out a bit better because you rely on your natural instinct, your muscle memory, rather than sort of overly processing, well, I'm going to hit it like this with this part of my foot. And yeah, but no, it was genuinely fantastic to see Solly March back. I hope we see, drips and drabs of him across the remainder of the year. And hopefully that we'll see Solly March back to as near to his best as we possibly can. perhaps even next season. But yeah, we'll have to take it nice and slowly because we don't want Solly out again, because that genuinely could be it. But no, it was a frustrating game. I think, as we've talked about, it all got a bit Graham Potter, as I've already said. But Joe, if there was a single player that sort of stood out for you as the man of the match, who would you give it to?
As I say, shout out to Brian Gruder. I thought he was excellent and has been in every cameo I've seen from him so far. Really good for him to get the start, obviously. But my man of the match has to go to Joel Veltman. I think he's so important to this team. He's been quoted saying he wants to stay with us for another year. Please, Joel Veltman, never leave my football club, because I love you with everything I am. Joel Veltman is my man of the match.
A good shout, yeah. Joel Veltman just gets it, doesn't he? He went to the Stand or Fall premiere as well. I'm sure other players did as well, but he just seems like one of those players that just gets it. So yeah, big fan of Veltman. How about you, Curtis? Who was your player of the match?
Probably JP Van Heck. I thought he was fantastic. Made some key defensive plays, and I just love him with that bandage around his head and everything. Absolute warrior.
Yeah, Steve Foster vibes from the 1980s. Yeah, I hope he keeps it. I quite rate it, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, so another good shout. I think I'm just going to come in on what you've just posted, Michael. I had starred the message, but I think it's just worth mentioning now as we're talking about JP Van Hecker. Lewis Dunk's form has been really quite worrying over the last 5 games or so. I sort of skipped over it a little bit, but the fact that he was out of position on the halfway line when Brentford broke and they got the ball in the back of the net only for it to be disallowed from VAR, just way out of position, He's never been the fastest defender, but he's always had, that intelligence to give himself an extra yard or two of space so he can catch up with those pacey wingers and whatnot. But he's not, I don't know if that playing higher up the pitch is something that Fabian's asked him to do. And if he
anyone,
has,
it should be JP.
exactly,
JP's got a little bit more legs to get back.
Exactly, JP or Igor. They're because they are more mobile centre backs than Lewis is, and then Lewis can be used as a sweeper. I agree with you, Michael. I think that I was calling for Igor to start even when Dunk came back from injury, and I have seen nothing from Lewis Dunk over the last few games that has dissuaded me from thinking that Igor should have kept his place in the squad. He is experienced, and yes, he is our club captain, but I think it's getting to a point now where if he's more of a hindrance than a help, I think Dagan said it a couple of games ago. There are certain games where you think, well, if Lewis Dunk had been on the pitch, we might not have conceded that goal, or this might not have happened. But since his return, as I say, I've not been overly convinced. Hopefully he can play his way back into form. But yeah, it just seemed harsh to drop in form Igor for Dunkey. And now my player of the match, I was going to give it to Veltman because I agree with you, Joe. I think we've missed Joel Veltman so much over the last couple of weeks. But I'm also going to give an honourable mention to Matt O'Reilly, who I thought, first half especially was really handy. I think that we talk about the sort of chopping and changing of midfield pairs. I think Matt O'Reilly as well has been one that's been in and out of the squad due to injury, the big injury, of course, and he came back, then he's had a little niggle, and then he's back again. But no, he looks a good player, and I think he's be one that if we can keep him fit moving forward, I think he's going to be really, really useful this season. So yeah, I would give it to Veltman, but with a nice little subtle nod to Matt O'Reilly. So there you go. I have also starred another comment that was made a bit earlier by Doom Ultima, saying he's surprised about the amount of hate Hursley is getting. How much of that do you think is warranted? And I was going to talk about something that I've seen leveled at Herzler quite a lot, and that is his use of subs. Um, Subs often come quite late in games, meaning that the players have had little time to make an impact. But there was just one thing I wanted to mention about the subs in the Brentford game, and that was because I saw something from Matoma that I don't usually see. I don't know if you picked up on this, Joe, in the stadium. When Matoma came off with alongside O'Reilly and Gruder for Adingra, Ayari, and Minte, Matoma was not happy. He was not a happy bunny. And you don't normally see that from Matoma. And I think we've seen Matoma struggle a little bit in front of goal this season, but there is no doubt about it that he is one of our best players. What do you make of Herzler's subs, not just against Brentford, but generally speaking? Because this is one of the things that a lot of people level against Herzler, that his subs aren't necessarily well timed. They're normally reactive instead of proactive. What does Joe Sayers think?
Well, first of all, you know how I feel about Simon Adingra. Exactly. So there's a joke in the Albion Obsessed group chat that every time Simon Adingra touches the ball, I will send the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man gif, because that's what he reminds me of when he plays. There's no control about that man whatsoever. But congratulations for getting second in AFCON Player of the Year. Yeah, I don't know. I did think it was a bit weird with Matoma coming off, because I thought Matoma, without the lack of end product, was excellent. Yeah, a couple of days ago, I did think that we were seeing Matoma come back to his best. His first touch was absolutely flawless. He was running, and I thought that he could be the difference. And as soon as I saw him come off, I was a little bit gutted that it was Adingra coming on to replace him, but I was also then hopeful, and my attention then shifted to Minter to see what he could do, and he was pretty electric when he came on, doing a lot of good running, and that's what we have grown to love about Jan Kuba, is that he's got an engine on him. I think those subs were okay. I think he was trying to freshen things up. Maybe the wrong decision to take Matoma off, but everything else was fine, in my opinion. Obviously, the substitutions prior in the Leicester game when he brought on Igor, hindsight's a great thing. Yeah, it was a stupid thing to bring him on because he's the one that made the mistake. But Herzler wasn't to know that he was the one to make that mistake. But you can obviously look at it tactically and say, well, that wasn't the right move to make anyway. So yeah, I think there's a lot of naivety coming into it for being such a, I wouldn't say an inexperienced coach, because he's not, just not experienced in the Premier League and managing, real intense moments that really, really, really matter. So yeah, just frustrating. But I thought the subs on Friday, whenever it was, were fine.
Yeah, that's fine. I think as I say, just one of the things that Doom mentioned about a lot of criticism is always leveled at a coach when you're going through a bad run. And I saw an interesting post, Curtis, on the North Stand Chat Facebook, where someone was sort of dissecting where they feel like we are at the moment. And I think it stems from a quote that Fabian Herzler said in the summer about he wanted to change things, but not too soon. It seems to me, and I think I've said it on the podcast before, it seems to me we're sort of like in between these two styles. We're still sort of seeing some De Zerbi ball mixed in with whatever it is that Fabian, I've almost done that again, is sort of bringing to the table. And do you think that's sort of like, I've leveled that criticism at him. I've said, nope, you do you. Stop trying to be Graham Potter, De Zerbi 2.0. Be Fabian Herzler. We want fab ball. The football we were sort of seeing in Japan. I know it's Japan, We were sort of seeing it in pre-season. We were playing a 3-4-2-1, which is what I was expecting when we signed him, knowing what I know about St. Pauli. And then we started the Premier League and we were playing a 4-2-3-1, which is very RDZ ball. We've got a lot of attacking players, and I thought, we've got a lot of number 10s, and that's why I thought we were stockpiling them so we could play them either side of, Welbeck or Ferguson, but it's sort of not transpired. Do you think, Curtis, that, he's still sort of taking that sort of slowly approach, or perhaps is it a confidence thing that he doesn't want to try the style that he used at St. Pauli because he doesn't think it will fit? Do you think we're in between these two styles? What do you think? What do you think?
I think yes to both of those things. I definitely agree with the opposing styles thing. I think it's quite clear that there's a lot of butting in regards to those styles. I too was looking forward to seeing how the Hertzler style, but I do agree. I don't think we've fully had that yet, and I do hope we get that sooner rather than later. But it does make you wonder as to why he's not fully committed to doing that yet, and if that's maybe he feels he doesn't have the right players to do it, or whatever it is. I guess only time will tell. But I think this is why we have to practice patience with it, because it might just be a case of he just needs a bit more time to fully realize his vision and whatnot. But I get the annoyances from the fans. But I just think we have to be a bit more patient.
Tom, I have a question for you on the back of what Curtis has just said. I mean, patience in this fan base is something that has been before. With most recently Graham Potter, it took him a long while to get us to where we were when he left. Do you think the lack of patience has come in from because De Zerbi came in and hit the ground running? Do you think there's an essence of, well, Fabian Hertzler should be able to do that too? But in my opinion, when you look at it with what Curtis has just said, that it is another patience project.
I think what you said there, Joe, about Potter and De Zerbi ring very true. I think no matter what we think of him now, De Zerbi shifted the goalposts. De Zerbi gave us European football for the first time in our history. He changed us from a XG, meme into we are a big club. No, and I think that, again, no matter what happened since, during, and after, he did something that many of us never thought we'd ever see. And even though it got sour towards the end of his tenure, and I still maintain that if Bloom and Barber had backed him this time last year in January, things might have been different. But there's no point dwelling on that because it's been and gone. Fabian has inherited a very skilled squad. The club have invested very heavily in the squad, and we started the season really well. So I think people's sort of expectations grew because of those multitude of things. The decent squad that he already had, big investment from the club, and a really good start. So we were sitting pretty at the start of the season. I think a lot of the frustration probably is amplified not because of the results in isolation, but because of the manner in which many of those results have happened. Wolves, Leicester, Southampton, Palace. Those results will get people angry because those are the results where you're looking at them thinking, we threw away a 2-0 lead, not once against the team at the bottom, but twice. We didn't beat the team that were glued to the bottom of the table, who were shipping goals at home. We were lucky not to lose. Those are probably where a lot of the anger and impatience have come from. I think if you just looked at the table and you just took everything out of context and you went like, right, here we are, we're what, 10th with a new manager. That's not too bad, is it? I think most fans at the start of the season would have gone, yeah, that's fine, that's there or thereabouts. But I think, football is an emotional game, and you can't, no matter how much you want to, remove the emotion from it. And the context of those results are important, because people wouldn't be angry at those if we were 2-0 down and we came back to draw 2-2. But because we capitulated in the last 5 minutes of games, because we went up against our biggest rivals and didn't turn up, that's why people are angry. That's why people are impatient. That's why some people are calling for Hurstler out. There was someone at the darts who had written Hurstler out on a card and put it on national TV. So I'm not condoning it, but those are the reasons why, in my opinion, that it's happened. I think fans have got to temper their expectations, and I have to do that as well. At the start of the season, I was like you, Curtis. I thought 9th, 10th, that would have been, okay, considering very inexperienced manager. But I was also expecting a complete change of system and style, which I haven't seen yet, which is why perhaps I'm starting to get a bit impatient, because I'm just like, no, dude, just come on, just play 3-4-2-1, empty the midfield, because that's what we were told that you're going to try and do. Play the style that you did with St. Pauli. Be brave. You said about fighting the establishment. Let's fight the establishment. I suppose I've been, irked, like many, with some of the sort of capitulations, not holding on to a lead. I think it's 15 points, 16 points dropped from winning positions, and that's not a good thing. So the club, Fabian needs to have a look at that, and he needs to sort of tweak things tactically and personnel to make sure that stops. So, in a very rambly way, Joe, I totally understand why some people are impatient, because it's human nature to be impatient, and we've been very blessed and very lucky over the last few seasons. We worked incredibly hard as a club, and the fact that the Bloom is always saying, this is us becoming a mainstay in Europe. Not that it doesn't help, but that's where people's expectations are. So when we are below the European places, or admittedly not by many points at all, when we're below those European places, people are going to start to get a bit antsy. And when you haven't won in a month, people will start looking at the table and going, well, when is the next win coming? Because we just played Southampton. We should have beaten them. They're Southampton. They're the bottom of the table. We've just played Leicester. They can't buy a win at the moment. We didn't beat them. It's worrying. And then you play games against your bogey teams like Aston Villa, like we do tomorrow, and you start thinking, oh God, we're going to be up against Villa and Ollie Watkins, who scores for fun against us. So, I'm starting to think, where does the next win come from? Where does the next point come from? Where does the next goal come from? So, yeah, I can see why the people are frustrated, but I can also see why there's lots of reasons to be positive.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Tom.
See, I'm nothing if not, balanced and reasonable. As I say, neither at the extremes. That was a very rambly ramble. I'm sorry about that, everyone. The inner workings of an ADHD brain. I did mention, though, there that we are going to play against Aston Villa tomorrow. That's going to be fun, Joe, because we always do really well at Villa Park.
Yeah, it's the Sayers Steele family derby. My auntie is a Villa fan, my cousin's a Villa fan, and so I hope we win, because I won't hear the end of it otherwise. So yeah, it's a tough game. They come in thick and fast, as they do over the festive period. I think you really have to look at it as just a chance to get another win. I know they're a bogey team, but this season has been really, really weird. For not just us, for loads of teams, it's been really strange. So yeah, I wouldn't put it past us to go there and win, and then do something against Arsenal in a week's time as well. So yeah, we've got some really tough games coming up, and where does that next win come from? Let's hope we do something special over this next week.
Yeah, let's hope so. You got to hope. How about you, Curtis? What do you think about the Villa game? Got a score prediction for us?
I've never had a good experience with Villa. The first game I ever saw, a Brighton game in person, was a loss in the box. Won tickets to that. That was fun. But at least we're in the box, Tom. That was fun. We met Guy Butters, I believe, that day, didn't we, or something?
We did.
Yeah. Oh, pretty cool. I agree with Joe. I just think that we just have to look at it as an opportunity to get a win. And in regards to the sort of the point of where the win's going to come from, we have to believe that we can get a win out of every game that we play moving forward. We have to have the mindset that we can do it. Otherwise, we're not going to get anything. So I'm just going to go in tomorrow positive, because I have to do that, because otherwise I would be at the bottom of a whiskey bottle. So
I can empathise with that, because if we do lose tomorrow, my life will be miserable. For the
not only would you be sick, you would have watched your team lose. So,
and just surrounded by Villa fans, that's the worst thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. I'm sorry.
It's just yeah. I've got kids that are on my football team, and their parents. My assistant manager, he's a Villa fan, and I just don't want to. I just don't need that hassle right now. So let's hope for a Brighton win, or just I'll settle for a point against Villa. I know I've just said about where's the next win coming from, but against Villa.
But I must say, Villa are a lot more beatable this season. We've seen them falter against teams where you didn't think they would drop points to. So in their own way, they're having a bit of a tumultuous season, but we'll just have to see.
You're right, Curtis. But then again, we're nice little old Brighton and Albion, and it's like someone just said, Fab is a nice man. Are we too nice? I mean, we've said at the start of the show, Brentford 1 point away from home all season until they rocked up at us. Southampton, same thing. Villa going through the mire at the moment. We're going to rock up. Are we going to cause them problems with our pitiful goal scoring record at the minute? Who knows? I'm being all negative. Sorry, everyone. I mean, Brighton are playing like 1970s Brazil. I don't know what you're talking about, guys. What's the problem? Everything is fine.
And there's the extremes.
Yeah. And there's the extremes. And I think those extremes are the perfect place to end tonight's podcast. Before we do sign off, don't forget to check out the Albion Obsessed Tenable that we're currently doing at the moment. That's been good fun. And I know that we're getting some more people on very soon to test their knowledge, all things Brighton and Hove Albion. So that's a good thing to watch if you haven't checked it out. So I think the first 3 episodes are currently on, with more on the way. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to find us on the usual social media platforms as well. We're on all of those. But I think that's probably it from me. Is that it from you, Joe?
That's it from me. Michael saying Tenable is great. I love it. You're so welcome, Michael. I stole the idea from Luke Pingu. So if you want to go and check his channel out, please do so. Yeah, but we love it. Next up is that guy. Not the snowman, Tom. So yeah, see how Tom gets on.
Yeah.
I think it's also prevalent to say thank you to everyone that has watched and commented through this year. We're almost at the end of 2024. And yes, thank you so much for just being around and watching the content. We wouldn't make it if it wasn't for people like yourselves. So just thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone, but mainly you. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking to you. Yeah, you right there. I'm talking to you. Thanks for checking us out, because we're just here to talk about football. We will do a sort of 2024 roundup when we do our post Villa pod. Assuming there isn't a huge amount to talk about. There probably will be though. So yeah, let's let's end it there, shall we? Wherever you may be, whenever you may be. We'll see you next time. Take care and Happy New Year.